10 years we fought. The war is finally over.
The 10 years of the War of Troy undoubtedly produced many heroes, but also a lot of absentee fathers and husbands who, when they finally got back home, found themselves in very surprising situations.
And let's just say, not all of them got the happy ending of Odysseus and Penelope.
Agamemnon, High King of the War of Troy, had probably dreaded the thought of going back home at the end of the war. He had been able to sail with all his ships only because he had sacrificed his firstborn daughter's Iphigenia to the goddess Artemis. But in doing so, he had incurred in the wrath of his wife Clytemnestra, who had cursed him and promised him painful retribution the moment he stepped back home.
He had likely dismissed the curses as the fanciful flights of a grieving woman, but I suspect that the closer he got to Mycenae, the more those words resonated in his head, casting a shadow over his return. History calls her a monster, a traitorous wife lying in wait for the hero.
But what if she was just a broken woman, hanging on to revenge?
The world had not been kind to Clytemnestra. Twin to Helen, yes, the Helen of Troy, she had learned from a very young age that love and affection was something that had skipped her entirely. It was always poured onto her beautiful sister and never onto her, the ugly duckling, the daughter no one wanted. While all the men fought over even just a glance from Helen, few scant offers were made for Clytemnestra's hand.
Eventually, a husband was found, Tantalus, king of Pisa. Clytemnestra's father had needed the political connections, but he hadn't wanted to waste beautiful Helen for this.
But then something unexpected happened. Clytemnestra found peace. She built a home. She had a husband who actually cared for her and gave birth to a son.
For the first time in her life, she wasn't just Helen's sister. She was a queen. She was a mother. She was happy.
But it wasn't to last. One day, vengeance came to Pisa in the form of Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, cousin of Tantalus.
Their fathers had been at war with each other. A dark history involving a stolen wife and a banquet with some objectionable meat.
Tantalus was the last loose end of that bloody feud, and Agamemnon was a man who believed in being thorough. He came in person to finish what his father started.
In the blink of an eye, Clytemnestra's entire world was incinerated. Her husband and her baby were killed, just for the bloodline they carried. The stories don't tell us this, but I think that Clytemnestra expected herself to be next.
But Agamemnon had a different plan for her. Ugly duckling she might have been, but she still was Helen's sister, heir to Sparta. His younger brother Menelaus had already secured Helen's own hand. If Agamemnon got Clytemnestra, it would secure the political alliance.
So he spared her, not out of mercy, but out of greed.
As she was forced to marry the butcher of her happiness, Clytemnestra was reminded that her family had never cared. Her sister watched as she became the property of a killer. Her father, the king of Sparta, simply approved the marriage.
Happy that his ugly daughter had finally brought some value to the family.
For a while the mask stayed on. Clytemnestra played the role of the dutiful queen, bearing Agamemnon's 3 more children, Electra, Orestes, and Iphigenia.
Agamemnon, arrogant as ever, assumed he had gotten away with his crime. He thought she was tamed. He was wrong.
Then the Trojan War began.
Send the winds, Zeus! Send the winds!
To get his ship sailing, Agamemnon needed wind. The gods demanded a sacrifice. And Agamemnon, ever the pragmatist, decided that trading his daughter Iphigenia for a favorable breeze was a solid business deal.
So he killed her without remorse.
Then boarded his ship and left for Troy for 10 years, to go help his little brother get back the wife and honor that had been stolen from him. He probably thought his wife would spend that decade pining for him. Instead, she was sharpening a blade. And so, 10 years later,
True to her word, Clytemnestra had managed to plunge a knife into Agamemnon's chest the moment he got back from war to avenge the death of her precious daughter Iphigenia, and then went on to rule Mycenae with her lover Orestes for many years to come.
according to the rules of the ancient world, Clytemnestra was arguably justified in exacting revenge on her husband for the death of her daughter.
Justified or not, Clytemnestra had killed her husband, and kinslaying was always punished in ancient Greece. Usually, avenging the father fell onto the shoulders of the eldest son. Enter Orestes, the estranged son of Clytemnestra and Agamemnon.
He had been sent away from Mycenae as a child, so he never spent time with his father. He was busy with the Trojan War, nor with his mother.
Estranged or not, Orestes was the eldest and only son of Clytemnestra and Agamemnon, and so it fell on him to avenge the murder of his father. Moreover, Apollo himself had told him that if he didn't avenge this gruesome murder, he would face not only human law, but also divine wrath. Faced with no other prospect but to avenge his father by murdering his mother, Orestes did the deed.
Since this had been a sanctioned act, Orestes probably expected Apollo's approval.
What he got was something very different.
Clytemnestra had not been dead a moment when Orestes began to scream. The Erinyes had come. Also known as the Furies in Latin, they were the daughters of night, tasked with punishing kinslayers. They didn't care that Agamemnon was dead. They didn't care that Apollo had ordered the murder.
To the Erinyes, Orestes' motives were irrelevant. The only thing that mattered was the blood on his hands.
They hounded him relentlessly across Greece. They denied him sleep, food and sanctuary, driving him to the absolute brink of madness. There was nowhere on earth left to hide.
Desperate for a little bit of relief, Orestes went to Apollo.
After all, it was the god who had forced this duty upon him in the first place. And if Apollo was the one who ordered the murder, surely he had a solution for the punishment.
In the end, Apollo proved himself to be quite useless. He took one look at Orestes, hounded by the Erinyes, and basically washed his hands of the entire thing. The only semi-useful thing that he told the poor Orestes was to go to Athens, because maybe, and only maybe, the goddess Athena could be able to help him.
So, out of options and running out of time, he dragged himself to Athens.
Once in the city, Orestes sought out the goddess Athena. Surely she would have a solution for him. And she did. Athena's solution was simple. Orestes needed to stand trial for what he'd done. Where? Well, on the Areopagus, right? So right here, on the Areopagus hill, right underneath her temple on the Acropolis, Athena called for the court of justice to judge Orestes and his crime. In the end, Orestes was found innocent of his crime.
Yes, he had killed his mother, but it had been a sanctioned act to avenge his father. An eternity hounded by the Furies seemed far too harsh a punishment. Despite the legally binding decision of the court, the Erinyes were not going to stop hounding Orestes, and nothing Athena could offer them would make them stop. And then Athena resorted a little bit of bribery
to get what she wanted.
In exchange for accepting the verdict, Athena offered them a permanent sanctuary beneath her Acropolis and a new title to match. They would no longer be the Erinyes, the angry ones. From that day on, they were known as the Eumenides, the kindly ones.
And Orestes? Well, he was finally free. Free of the Erinyes, free of the madness, free of the guilt. He started a new cult for Athena the Victorious in thanks for what she did, and then went on to live out the rest of his life in peace.
And they all lived happily ever after. Even Iphigenia. Wait, wasn't she dead?
Yeah, well, it turns out that Artemis had taken pity on the poor girl.
She swapped her out for deer at the last second and made Iphigenia her priestess.
I can't imagine Orestes' face when he met her again.